Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Brandon, and welcome back to Marotta Media. And in today's review, I will be talking about a movie that I have been looking forward to reviewing for quite some time. And that movie was Godzilla vs. Kong. Taking place a few years after the events of the last film in this franchise, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Godzilla has started unexpectedly attacking several cities, and everybody is curious as to why. Meanwhile, a group of humans takes Kong on this journey to find something called Hollow Earth, and along the way their paths cross a few times, resulting in some epic giant monster fights. Godzilla vs. Kong is the fourth entry in Warner Bros Monsterverse, the first movie in this universe being 2014's Godzilla, a movie that I was not particularly fond of when I first saw it in 2014. I just thought it was very boring, it did not have nearly enough Godzilla, and not enough action. Following that up was 2017's Kong Skull Island, a movie that I actually watched the other day for the first time, and surprisingly enjoyed a lot more than I thought I would. Stunning cinematography and interesting characters, but a very silly plot, but easily my favorite of this franchise thus far. And then there was 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters, a movie that I absolutely hated. And I still hate it. In fact, I hated that movie so much that when I first made a review of it, hell, I wouldn't even call it a review. I just took a shit on it for 10 minutes. And to this day, that remains my most controversial video. So needless to say, I have not really been fond of this franchise thus far, but I was eager to see Godzilla vs. Kong because I was thinking this has to be better. This is what it has been leading up to. Now, that being said, I did not go into this movie with expectations, that way I wouldn't be disappointed. But unfortunately, just like Dewey from Malcolm in the Middle, I expected absolutely nothing, and I was still let down. Yeah, I did not like this movie, and that really saddens me because I really wanted to like it. And the main issue with Godzilla vs. Kong is that it has so many good ideas, but it never expands on them. As I mentioned in the plot synopsis, Hollow Earth is what they are looking for along with Kong. And Hollow Earth is something that was mentioned in Kong Skull Island. It's like this place beneath the Earth's crust that is supposedly where all the monsters and titans originated from. And supposedly at one time Kong's ancestors ruled this land, but that's about the extent of what we find out about it. We never really go that deep into Kong's lineage, and I think that was such a waste. Because a few of the characters in the movie say that Kong's entire family is dead, and he's the last one of his kind. So I'm really curious, of the ones that lived in Hollow Earth, what happened to them? Like, how did they die? Were they just killed off, or did they just die of natural causes? But I think the entire idea of Hollow Earth was a huge wasted opportunity. And what I mean by that is that when they get to Hollow Earth, they kind of have to go through like this space time warp sort of looking thing. And also in Hollow Earth, gravity is very different. It's almost like it's split into two halves. Like, you're on the ground here, but if you pass a certain point, you start to go up, and then you're gravitated towards that point. Kind of like those certain sections in Mario games where you go up and down. You know what I'm talking about, right? And I think that this would have been an awesome opportunity to see a fight of some kind. And not even necessarily just a fight between Kong and Godzilla. While that would have been awesome, I feel that they could have played with this idea a lot more than they did. And speaking of the fights, because that is what we all came here to see. We came to see a giant monkey fighting a giant lizard. And when there is fighting, it is a lot of fun. I've had no complaints in that department when it came to this universe, but just like its predecessor, Godzilla vs. Kong doesn't really have many fights. Because I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that Kong and Godzilla fight twice. And you see both of those fights in the trailer. They fight on the ocean and they fight in Hong Kong. And that's it. That's the only time they ever do. I would have liked to have seen more interaction between them where they're fighting in these different varied locations, like I said, maybe Hollow Earth. But in its downtime, when Kong and Godzilla are not the focus, you're focused on these human characters. And that's one of my main criticism with the previous two Godzilla movies. Too much time is spent on the human characters. Now, I know you can't just have nonstop fights between these monsters or follow Godzilla or Kong throughout their day, because I'm sure it's really not that interesting. But that's what I want to see more of. I want to see more Godzilla and Kong. That is the name of the movie. But like I said, the human characters are primarily the focus. And just like in King of the Monsters, these humans are absolutely useless. They are somewhat more developed in this movie than King of the Monsters, and their motivations are made a little bit more clear. But something that baffled me is that this entire movie is primarily new characters. There are only 2 characters returning from the previous 3 movies, and that's Millie Bobby Brown and Kyle Chandler. And Kyle Chandler is barely in it. I'm just curious why they didn't bring back more characters from King of the Monsters. Or the previous movies for that matter. Well, except Kong Skull Island, because that movie took place in the 70s. That's the exception. But everyone else, where did they go? And as I mentioned, Millie Bobby Brown is one of the few characters that return from the previous movies. And in this movie, she goes on an adventure with Brian Tyree Henry, who plays this conspiracy theorist podcaster, and her friend, played by Julian Dennison. And I can't help but feel like the story just came to a screeching halt whenever they were the focus. I mean, they didn't really do a whole lot, and I'm not even entirely sure what their plan or endgame was. And the villain in Godzilla vs. Kong was also slightly better than that of King of the Monsters, but only slightly. Because unlike King of the Monsters, I actually understood this villain's motivations. And just as a refresher, if you don't remember, in King of the Monsters, the antagonist wanted to, unleash all the titans of the world to basically destroy the world in hopes of rebuilding it. And I don't know about you, but I didn't think that made any sense at all. And in this one, the villain, Walter Simmons, I think was his name. That's a total guess. But I actually understood his motivation in this one. He wants humans to remain the top dog in the world by killing all the remaining titans. But I only understand that slightly, because we never go any further into Walter Simmons' goal of killing the titans and having humans remain the top species in the world. It's only discussed at a surface level. And something else I discovered after I watched this movie, I think I saw it on Twitter, but Walter Simmons' right-hand man, his sidekick, is the son of Ken Watanabe's character from King of the Monsters. If you don't remember who that guy is, he's the one who went into the cave when Godzilla was sleeping and recharging, and he basically sacrificed himself in an explosion to jumpstart Godzilla's heart. But that relation is never explicitly said. So how was the audience supposed to know that they were father and son? And another new character that's introduced is this little girl named Gia. She's a deaf girl who's a local of Skull Island, and she's built this relationship with Kong. She communicates with him through sign language, and you could tell that both of them really understand each other. And it was actually kind of a cute, sweet little moment in the movie. But their relationship is never really fleshed out any more than that. Because I believe it's mentioned at one point that Gia's parents were killed. In fact, I think all of the locals of Skull Island were killed. So, what happened? Did Kong take care of her and that's how they came to be? But I don't know. You never really know anything more than what you're given. And speaking of that girl, Gia, her presence in this movie really confused some of my friends who I saw this movie with. Specifically 2 friends who had never seen any of the previous movies in this universe. They thought that they were missing so much information when it came to Kong and Gia's relationship, But then me and my other friend, who have seen all the movies in the universe, explained that this is her first appearance and she is not in any of the other movies. But when we told them this, they just became more confused and they just said it felt like there were scenes that were missing. They thought they were missing so much context, but that context was never there to begin with. Now, granted, that may be a little on them for not watching the previous movies, but still, if you're confusing your audience that much by introducing a boatload of new characters, then you really do have a problem on your hands. And this next part of the review is something that I absolutely have to mention to get into my full thoughts of this movie. But I am warning you now, it does involve spoilers, so if you have not seen Godzilla vs. Kong, then skip to this part of the video. So at the end of the movie, it's revealed that the reason Godzilla is attacking all of these cities is because this corporation called Apex, run by Walter Simmons, is building Mechagodzilla. And Mechagodzilla is being controlled by Ken Watanabe's son inside of King Ghidorah's skull using this, like, supercomputer. And it was actually a pretty badass looking thing. I liked how it looked a lot. But then somehow Mechagodzilla just magically becomes sentient because King Ghidorah's consciousness took over the computer, and then he proceeds to kill Walter Simmons when he's in the middle of this really cliched, mustache-twirling, villainous monologue. And then that's when Godzilla and Kong need to come together to fight the common enemy of Mechagodzilla. And this next part that I'm going to mention is where I completely checked out and said, fuck this movie. How do you think they beat Mechagodzilla? Well, if you guessed that Millie Bobby Brown and her friends spilled whiskey all over a keyboard to cause a malfunction within him, then you are absolutely correct. No, I'm not kidding. That is how Mechagodzilla is defeated. They pour whiskey onto a keyboard. It's so fucking stupid. And then as a result of this, Godzilla cuts Mechagodzilla's arms off. And it looks pretty awesome, but just the way we got there was absolutely ridiculous. And then after Mechagodzilla is defeated, Kong and Godzilla take one last look at each other, and then Godzilla basically gives him a nod of approval and leaves and swims away into the ocean. So I guess the director was an absolute liar when he said that there was definitely a winner, meaning that one of the two characters was going to die at the end, because that turned out not to be true. But this movie completely lacks logic, and I actually got into a little bit of a debate with a friend of mine who saw this movie and really enjoyed it. And he said that it made perfect sense for whiskey to be the reason that they won everything. I completely disagreed with him, but, you know, we can have disagreements. But I wanted to touch on something he said. He said if you went into a movie where the main central plot is a giant lizard fighting a giant monkey, then logic should have been left at the door. So with that reasoning, I guess any movie with a far-fetched plot that would never happen in reality can't have logic, like everything is just up for grabs. But that's the biggest issue with this entire movie, man. It doesn't make sense to me. Godzilla vs. Kong really had a lot of good ideas, and it had a lot of good things going for it, but absolutely none of the plot points that I enjoyed were expanded upon. And that's why I think this movie could have really benefited from a much longer runtime. I don't know, dude. Maybe this universe just isn't for me, because a lot of people really seem to enjoy these movies, and good for them. I'm glad they like them, because I really wish I did. But to me, this movie was a total disappointment. It was not good at all. And overall, I would give Godzilla vs. Kong a 4 out of 10. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching my review of Godzilla vs. Kong. If you guys saw this movie, let me know what you thought about it. Did you love it like a lot of people? Or were you not that crazy about it like me? If you guys like this review, then be sure to hit that thumbs up, and do not forget to subscribe. If you want to see my past reviews, then I will link those right over here. Other than that, I hope you all have a tremendous rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.